I think the Miami Dolphins should sign Ryan Tannehill in NFL free agency and bring him back to the Miami Dolphins. I think it's a question that a lot of Dolphins fans are asking after what we saw from Skylar Thompson and Mike White in the first preseason game against Atlanta. And to me, I actually do believe this is something Chris Grier should do. I think it's a smart move. There's a lot of reasons that go into potentially bringing back Ryan Tannehill in terms of the results we've seen from Skylar Thompson and Mike White in training camp in the first preseason game and in the past, but also realizing where this Dolphins roster is and providing yourself extra insurance just in case a Tua Tagovailoa injury occurs, because even though Tua played 17 games last season and we feel confident about him doing it again, we know about his past, and that is one of the biggest concerns with Tua. So having an established backup quarterback could really benefit the Miami Dolphins. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of today's show, make sure you follow me on Twitter, because if a move does happen with the Fins, whether it be releasing a player like T.R. Tart yesterday when we broke that down on Twitter and the channel, we're going to have you covered on any move the Dolphins end up making. My handle is at Nic_Rohloff. Go give me a follow. I'll follow back the first 10 people that follow me from today's show, so go give me a follow right now. All right, but the reason why this conversation has been sparked is because of how poor these two players had of a performance in that week 1 game against the Atlanta Falcons. It was a hard watch, man. Skylar Thompson went 8 of 19, 95 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 INT, and that 1 pick was horrific. He threw it right to the defender over the middle of the field. There was a little bit of pressure in his face, but still bad that he made that throw. See the QB rating there, but then the Mike White one was, I mean, this is bad. I'm actually convinced that I could go out there and have a better performance. And maybe that's aggressive, and I know the Dolphins wide receivers didn't help him out any bit because there was some drops, but 4 of 14, 26 yards, and a QB rating of 39.6, like, it was some of the worst quarterback play that I have ever watched in my entire life. And I think our producer, Matt Goldman, can also second that. He was telling me that it was a tough watch live as well. Like, listen, I don't expect them to go out there with third-string offensive linemen, third-string wide receivers, and try to go deal and look like Patrick Mahomes out there. But if you want to be a backup quarterback and you want to have an NFL roster spot, you have to at least flash the capability of moving the football through the air. And both these quarterbacks, to me, just did not show me enough here. And the reason why I do want to talk about this even more is a possibility for the Dolphins to bring back Ryan Tannehill. It's because when you just look at what this Dolphins roster has right now, this team is absolutely loaded, and it has so many veterans at the near end of their contract on one-year deals. Like, if Tua were to get hurt, you can't punt this season. You'd just be wasting so many people's times, like Calais Campbell, like Jordan Poyer, the tail end of Jalen Ramsey's career, like 1 year of Kendall Fuller's. You got him on a cheap 2-year deal because he wanted to come in here and compete for a title. Like, you can't waste the contracts that you have right now and some of the good veteran pieces you have on both sides of the football. So to me, getting a competent backup is one of the bigger priorities on this team potentially right now. And I think Tannehill is the best one available, and that's not even a think. That is a well-known fact of him being the best quarterback available on the free agent market. But the trade market could provide a different story, which we'll talk about on the end of today's show. But before we talk even more on Ryan Tannehill specifically, should the Dolphins sign Ryan Tannehill? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Type S for sign or type P for pass. It's been an interesting final 4 seasons for Tannehill, at least leading up to this year, because, well, if you remember his 3-year stretch after leaving the Fins, when he helped the Titans go to the AFC Championship game, then 2 wildcard appearances. Like, he was really good in 2020 and 2021, having a good completion percentage, over 3,700 yards, 33 touchdowns, 21 touchdowns respectively, and a decent QBR. Now, it did fall off a cliff over the last 2 seasons. Injuries played a factor into that, having poor stats in 2022, and then having an even worse year in 2023 when he played, which ultimately led to Will Levis being the starter for the final 7 games of that season. But like I mentioned, when he first got to Tennessee, him and Mike Vrabel absolutely were looking like a duo that was going to be competing in the AFC for years to come. Now, yes, there was some big-time moments from Derrick Henry and big-time moments from A.J. Brown and some gaffes from other teams, like the Baltimore Ravens being the number 1 seed and choking in that 2019 season. But you can't knock that Tannehill at the helm got their team into a competitive spot in Tennessee. And you might be saying, well, yeah, that was a long time ago, but I don't even think it matters like that, because when you look at what the Titans roster was during that time, like, those Titans rosters are not better than the one Miami has right now. If you were to compare those two teams, I think the Dolphins would actually have a better roster spot in every single position outside of the offensive line. Like, if you were to give me Derrick Henry or the trio of Jalen Wright, Devon Achane, and Raheem Mostert, maybe this is a hot take, but you'd probably get better production from those 3 backs rather than just the one Derrick Henry. And then the wide receiver plays, no question. Waddle and Tyreek Hill are just absolutely OP, and I think the defense of Miami this season is better than those Titans defenses. So to me, Tannehill would have the best team that he's ever played on, and yes, he did not play well last year or the year prior, and he dealt with injuries. But as a backup option, if you needed to replace Tua because of an injury and you were going to try to stay competitive, Ryan Tannehill is probably as good as it gets. And we're going to talk more about it here in just a second. But we are sponsored by Prize Picks, and I'm happy that Prize Picks is back. They were with us last NFL season, and it's good to be here again for football that's joining us just around the corner. And make sure you get started with Prize Picks, because they're offering you a first deposit match up to $100 when you download the app and use code CLNS. Or you can just go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and input code CLNS to get a first deposit match up to $100. They're the absolute best way to play daily fantasy sports. They have great promotions for you. They lower stat projections on Tuesdays, Taco Tuesday, baby. They also allow you to get your entry backs if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. That's Flex Friday. They have the best way to play. They allow you to get your money back if you need to. And you can turn actually $10 into $1,000 right now with Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can do season-long projections. You can do daily projections for Dolphins games. I love everything Prize Picks has to offer. And make sure you get started today. Link's going to be in the description and comments of today's video. PrizePicks.com/CLNS is the link. CLNS is the promo code. First deposit match up to $100. Shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's show. Pick more, pick less. That simple. All right, let's go into Ryan Tannehill now, because this is his career stats as a Miami Dolphin. And yes, he was a former first-round pick, actually wide receiver. I'm sure you guys knew that. Just kidding here. But Tannehill had an interesting career with Miami, right? Had a solid yardage, touchdown, wasn't asked to do a ton, led a team to the playoffs. Like, Tannehill was okay, but nothing really crazy that stood out to me. Like, he definitely was better with Tennessee and had more success with the Titans over the Miami Dolphins. There's certainly no disputing that if you're asking me. So my question is if he would even want to return to the Dolphins after being away from the team and not having the most success after being selected from him. Like, I do think that he would be open to coming back. Now, Miami would have to offer him that deal, but here's the thing here with Miami. Tannehill clearly wants a starting role. He would not have a starting role with the Miami Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa is still there. But if it gets into training camp, if it gets into the regular season, and he's still a free agent, what is the holdup? Like, are you going to really just not play the season and just hope that a starting quarterback goes down and that's when a team calls you? It's not a bad idea, because there is going to be a guaranteed starting quarterback in the NFL that ends up getting hurt in the first month of the season. There just always happens. But maybe he wants security, and if the Dolphins come up to him after the 3 preseason games, there's no major injuries to any starting quarterbacks, and Chris Grier's like, hey, Tannehill, want to come be our backup quarterback this season? Why not say yes? But the question to me is, what happens if you want to bring in Ryan Tannehill, and that ultimately he doesn't want to come to Miami? Because I do think a backup quarterback spot is still important for the Miami Dolphins. But if he doesn't want to come, like, what is the best option? Because I ain't going out there and grabbing some of these other dudes, because they are really bad in free agency. I'm not even going to mention any names. That's how bad it is. So we'd have to turn our attention to the QB trade market for a backup quarterback out there. And I've actually got 8 names that could be quite intriguing for the Dolphins in a trade situation. Here are some of the top backups in the NFL, if you're asking me. Justin Fields and Jameis Winston headline this list. Winston obviously backing up Deshaun Watson. They also have Tyler Huntley, who's last on our list. They have 2 quarterbacks that have had starting experience in the past. And I think if they wanted to part ways with one of them, I think Huntley and Jameis Winston are both upgrades over Mike White and Skylar Thompson, and it would only cost you about a 7th-round pick to get Huntley. Jameis Winston might cost you a 5th or something like that, but I think it could be worth it. Fields is an intriguing name because if Russell Wilson ends up winning that job and performs well early in the season, maybe that's a trade option. Kenny Pickett is interesting. Drew Lock is interesting as well. But the one that actually catches my eye the most here, if we're going to be honest, is Sam Howell, who was traded away from Washington to Seattle after they drafted Jaden Daniels and signed Marcus Mariota. Howell's behind Geno Smith. I think Howell got a raw deal in Washington this past year with how bad that offensive line is. I think Howell has a little bit of talent to him, and I think if Tua actually did go down, he'd be able to run the Mike McDaniel offense quite well. So if I were to trade for any of these 8 guys, I think Sam Howell would be my number 1, Fields number 2, Jameis Winston number 3. We're not going to rank all of them, but that would be my top 3 because I think Howell actually could run this offense quite well, and he's not afraid to be a gunslinger. I think Mike McDaniel would really like that. Out of those 8 quarterbacks, though, which quarterback interests you the most? We're not talking Tannehill here because we're just talking about 8 guys that if Tannehill was signed elsewhere or didn't want to come to Miami, the Dolphins could go out and still get if they wanted to address that backup quarterback job. Let me know which quarterback interested you the most from that 8-player list I had. Before we get out of here, I just do want to say this, though. Let's hope it doesn't come to this, because the only reason why we would have to have any of these guys plays is if Tua Tagovailoa got hurt. And we obviously do not want that at all. Tua had a really good season last season, leading the league in passing, playing in all 17 games. Never done that before. Let's hope he's able to do that for a second consecutive season, play in all 17, and have a strong finish to the year, because I do not want to have to worry about quarterback play outside of Tua Tagovailoa. Also, make sure you hit that follow button on me at Twitter at Nic_Rohloff. Like I said, if any Dolphins news happens or any moves are actually made by Chris Grier and this front office, you will find out first on my Twitter at Nic_Rohloff, and then we will come over here and make a video. So make sure you follow me over there. First 10 people get a follow back, so hopefully I see you over there.